Hi everyone, Azriel Knight here, and welcome to Darkroom Nights 2022. This is the second year in a row that I'm doing this mini-series, and essentially it is a multi-part series where I take you into the darkroom and you follow along with me as I create a box set of my favorite photos from the previous year. Last year I made 8 darkroom prints and I made a really nice box set, and I thought I would do it again this year. I really enjoyed the challenge of showing you guys the process of all my ups and downs and lefts and rights from last year, and if you missed it, here are some highlights. What is that from? That is messed up. I did a fog test, and the ilfo speed completely failed. This looks much better. It was a dumb mistake. I'll admit it. It was stupid. Yesterday was a surprising success. Yeah, so it's going to be back to the drawing board. As painful as it is, man, I am so exhausted. I was completely unprepared for this. And that's what I love about it. It's got this really cool film noir look. So far, I am not enjoying this paper developer. My plan is to crop from here to about there. It's a fantastic shot. I really like the fog and the streets and the cars and all the little details and everything. I would print off a shot, I'd get to the washing phase, and there it was. And I'd go back and I'd dust and clean and wipe everything down, and then I would print off another one and the hair just moved over. This is probably the first day since the start of the mini-series where everything just went super smooth. I feel like, you know, Clark Kent in the Fortress of Solitude, and I've just been bombarded with Kryptonian symbols for the last 10 days or whatever. So as you can see, there were definitely some ups and downs. It was definitely a roller coaster. It was exhausting. I think I'm more prepared this year. I'm going to do things a little bit different. One of the things I'm definitely going to focus on is the story behind the images rather than darkroom equipment. As you probably are aware by now, I used multiple enlargers and papers and developers, and I sort of got caught up in the equipment aspect of things, which wasn't horrible, and I'm still going to definitely touch on equipment this year, but I'm going to focus more on my strengths. So that means more RC paper, just one enlarger, this one right back here, and just buckle down and produce the best images that I can. So less expired paper, less expired chemicals, still going to use some just for interest's sake, but more of what I do best. I'm also going to try and shrink down the length of the episodes. When I went back and I rewatched them, I found them to drag on a bit. I need to work on my pacing, and I want to make sure that I keep things nice and tight and I'm not over-explaining things. A couple other things that I'm trying out this year is that I'm going to give you a link in the description for a pre-order of the box set. You're going to get a 50% discount and free shipping if you decide to buy the box set before the end of this series. I'm also accepting donations. I've already received a very generous donation from one of my patrons, and a pre-order for that matter, so thank you very much to Fenna Pell for her generous support to this endeavor. You can find a PayPal link in the description. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm giving early access to all of my Discord members. The reason for that is I'm going to be doing a daily giveaway, and the only way you're going to be able to qualify is if you're a member. Link in the description. In this episode, I'm going to be printing this photo. This photo was shot in Sundre, Alberta in March 2021. It was shot with my Pentax 6x7 with Fujifilm Neopan Acros, the original one. One of the other things I'm introducing this year is a topic related to the photo. In this case, I'm going to give you 3 things that I think you need to know about the Pentax 6x7. Let's get started. So the first thing I think you should know especially if you've never shot with a Pentax 6x7, is that loading the film is incredibly frustrating. Now, I've heard both sides. I've heard that it isn't a problem whatsoever to the individual, and I've heard it's like wrestling a square block into a round hole. It is incredibly frustrating. I'm part of the latter. I think it has been an uphill battle getting the film, especially in the field, into the camera. I'm going to show you a couple strategies though that definitely helped me load this camera faster. If you've never loaded a 6.7 before, the first thing you want to do is pull these tabs and turn them, and they'll lock into place. Then you want to push down on this release tab here and open. You want to make sure that there's a spool on the uptake side as well. Then you're going to take note on how this is positioned. In my case, it's sort of level, but it could be like this, it could be like that, it could be anywhere. So just make a mental note of that and then unwrap your film. So the biggest thing that helped me, and it sounds really kind of dumb actually, is that don't load the film like this. Turn the camera towards you and load like this. So even though it's at an angle on the camera, it's actually facing towards me because I'm off to the side. Now you want to match up the grooves on the film with the grooves on here, obviously. So I fold this back so I don't lose it. And then I place into the spool here and close, just like that. Actually, I'm really surprised I got that on the first take. So if this doesn't close completely flush here, you haven't loaded it properly. Then you want to pull across and insert into here. The next thing you want to do is start to advance. You want to advance to this arrow here. And if that means it reaches this point through half of a crank, stop right there. Don't finish the full crank. Close up. And advance several times until it won't advance anymore. And that is, I think, the best way to load a Pentax 6.7. The second thing that I think you should know is that while there is a locking mechanism preventing you from pressing the shutter button, if you're using a shutter release cable, this lock is not going to save you. Watch this. Screwed into place. You can see that before I had pressed the button and it did not go. You can see that it's in the lock position. There it goes. So if you're out and about, walking with the Pentax on a tripod and you've got the trigger in, make sure that this locking mechanism is in place so you don't accidentally waste a frame. The last tip for this video and third thing I think you need to know about the Pentax 6.7 is that the best print sizes for this negative are 4x5, 8x10, and 11x14. I'm using my photo for today as an example, and here are each of the crop factors. You can see it barely removes anything. The 6:7 ratio lends to a couple of really great standard print sizes. That's the one thing that I really love about this Pentax 6.7. Here is the negative for today's photo. This was taken in Sundre, Alberta in March 2021. My wife and I, we were on a bit of a vacation and we were just walking around town and came across this in front of somebody's house. It's a little out of place because this isn't during Halloween. This is in March, not October. Here's my digital scan again, just to show you a bit of a better idea of why I like this photo. I enjoyed the slight framing of the tree around the image. I like the shallow depth of field. It gives a really eerie look to it. This is obviously Ghostface from the Scream series, but with a few extra things. It looks like the scarecrow here was chopping wood and then took a break. Here are some other shots from that day. I'm going to be using Ilford multigrade fiber-based classic paper. I really enjoy this paper. I do still have some personal challenges with fiber-based paper, so you'll get to see all of those ups and downs and lefts and rights while I use this paper today. I will be developing in this batch of Aristidol that I put together, it looks like 1 month ago. When I did my comparison between this and Dectol about a month ago, I found them to be nearly identical. However, I'm going to be testing today, through use of it, whether or not this stuff still holds up after a month. Okay, folks, I've completed my first 2 test strips. This is the first one where I did a 1.5 contrast filter at 2-second intervals. And as you can see, it goes way too black, way too soon. So I immediately did a second test strip at 1/2-second intervals with the same contrast filter. And here's what I got. Much more reasonable interval times. 1/2 seconds makes it a little bit hard to read where each line is, but it's definitely better. Based on what I'm seeing here, 2.5 seconds seems to be probably the best bet. If you look at our Scarecrow's sleeve, that is at about the 2.5 second mark, and it looks good. All right, folks, here is my first test print, all completed and dry. You might notice that there is a little bit of curling, but overall, for a fiber-based print, this is pretty good. It did take me a couple of times to get to this point. What I had to do is I had to use my print washer, and I washed it for half an hour, and then I placed it into my dryer, and the first time around it didn't work out so great, so I tweaked the temperature and drying time, and I came up with this. Now, even though it's pretty crispy dry, I'm still going to place it in between some chipboard and then place a very heavy weight on top of it to keep it nice and flat. But I think I can move on to the remainder of my prints now. Okay, this should give you an idea of how my workflow is going. Basically, I've got 4 prints in here washing. This thing's supposed to agitate. I'm very new to using it. This is my first full test of it, and it still seems to be stopping every so often. The longest I can get it to run for is about 10 minutes at a time before the tray starts to float or it gets off kilter. Over here I've got 4 prints in the dryer, and I'm drying at a medium-low heat for about half an hour to 40 minutes. Okay, folks, I have a confession to make. And some of you are not going to like this. Some of you are going to think that I'm sort of jumping the gun here. But hear me out before you run to the comments and give me a piece of your mind. But I hate fiber-based prints. It has been a 10-hour day, and if I was using RC prints, it would have been a 2-hour day. I don't even exaggerate. I just bought this. It constantly stalls. It came with no instructions whatsoever. And if that wasn't enough, this print dryer here that I bought a while ago is completely underpowered compared to the last one I had. You would think that a brand new one, a brand spanking new dryer, would be better, but it's not. So I would wash a print here, and then I would toss it into the dryer, and it would curl on the sides, and no explanation whatsoever. So I'm going to make an executive decision here, and it might be a little bit controversial, but I gotta say, I am not prepared to be fighting with fiber-based prints for my box set. I said I was going to work with my strengths, and that means that I'm going to go 100% RC on this. Now, some of you might be a little bit disappointed. I totally get that. But for my sanity, I'm going to dump this set and start over with an RC paper. I'm not even kidding. This is my third time washing some of these prints. It is obviously very frustrating and a waste of a lot of paper and time and effort, but I'm saving myself a ton of time in the days to come as well. Okay, folks, it's the next day. I've had a chance to take a chill pill and have a good night's rest. I still believe I made the right call here. I did plan for this year's box set mini-series to be less about experimentation with equipment I'm not familiar with or not as familiar with, and more about going with my strengths and using the tools that I've learned and that I've somewhat mastered over the years. I took a bit of a break and I came back and I decided to go with my Arista RC variable contrast glossy paper. There was about 16 sheets left or so, just enough for me to do a set, and it was obviously a lot smoother. I was able to pretty much use the same contrast and almost the same exposure time of 2 seconds instead of 2.5 seconds. Here is my test strip for the Arista VCRC paper, and it was pretty much the same, just glossier. I'm very happy with the results. I will say that I did end up using the washer for the RC prints. Obviously, RC paper only needs a couple of minutes to rinse off, but rather than me bent over the sink using a shower head and rubbing it in the water, which has had some mixed results in the past, I did the majority of these by just placing them into the washer and then going back in here and doing my next set. The results were some of the cleanest prints I've ever had. And like I mentioned, I'll be doing the remaining of this series on RC paper. Yesterday, I was ready to swear off fiber-based prints forever, but I came back to reality and realized that fiber-based paper is a fickle mistress that requires a lot of experimentation and a lot of time. And when you're trying to do a marathon like I am right now, it just makes it 10 times harder, especially when I'm working with 2 new pieces of equipment. While I've had the drying bed for a while, I haven't really had a chance to fully immerse myself in it and really get to know its characteristics. It isn't as good as my old one. I do miss my old one, but unfortunately it's gone. If you guys have any experience with either of these pieces of equipment, I would love to hear your thoughts. Today's giveaway is going to be one of these prints, and because it's part 1 and I haven't had a chance to promote the Discord to too many of you yet, it's going to be open pretty much to just people who are already part of the Discord. In order to enter today's contest to get a chance to receive one of these prints, all you have to do is in the Discord channel, specifically the Darkroom Nights 2022 channel, is tell me your Darkroom nightmare story. Whatever it is, the worst experience you've had in the darkroom. Did you set something on fire? Did you flood the place? Did you drop a whole bottle of stop bath concentrate? Whatever it is, let me know. I will pick the one that I like the most and mail you one of these. That's all for now though. If you like what I do around here, please support me on Patreon. You'll get things like early access, free prints, and your name in the credits. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And until next time, stay classic.